Hey, this is Bret Jones. I am the director of filmmaking at Wichita State University, and I have with me, that's your cue.
Robert Thomas. I'm a filmmaker out of Wichita, Kansas, and an adjunct at WSU.
And we're going to be talking flicks. Flick talk. There you go. I just named the whole thing. Flick
Perfect.
talk. Does anybody even call it the flicks anymore? Am I the only one?
You're the only one, but you can add that to your list of idioms that you're bringing back.
They were called flickers for a while in the early days. Did you know that?
I didn't know.
Yep. Flickers. And then it was shortened to flicks. Photo plays. You ever hear that?
You see, but none of those apply anymore because you don't get flicking because it's all digital. There's no film reel, and
I was just sharing slang.
It's great. We love to learn about history here.
Photo plays. And then I think it was a while before it was actually called motion picture.
Yeah.
And then eventually movies, but I think movies came later. So I'm not 100% about that. What do we call them now? Film
franchises.
Yeah,
I think film, cinema, if you want to, get people to roll your eyes at you. But
I'm going to see Bill and Ted Face the Music at the cinema.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I don't think so. So I guess the thing to talk about, since it is August the 6th, 2020, the first thing that we should talk about is what we think about all the fun stuff happening with COVID and how it's affecting filmmaking.
Yeah.
And go.
Well, things are starting to pick back up production-wise, particularly not in the United States.
UK.
UK, just Europe in general. Australia is opening up for filming.
Yes. Yeah, I think Denmark and Iceland had a lot of action going on early on.
Yes, they did.
People were all flying there to film their stuff.
We've seen a lot of guidelines here in the States and some smaller productions start back up, but as far as I'm aware, the new Jurassic was supposed to be the first big studio film to start filming, and they're spending a ton of money on PPE and testing and all of that, but that's kind of gonna be the canary in the coal mine for other productions, I think, to kind of see how that goes.
Yeah, I think Witcher had also started back, and they're also in the UK.
Yeah,
I think from what I've read is, and it's something that the schools where my kids go have been really worried about, this is the food.
Yep.
And everybody's doing the prepackaged in the box. You get a little box lunch.
Yep. And French hours.
And what? I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
French hours, which there's been a really big push from above the line people to move to French hours for a long time. And French hours, if you don't know,
explain
that. Basically, you work through lunch. You don't take a lunch break, so you get done earlier. And the idea is, on set, any department is going to have downtime. So if you're, an actor, while they're hanging lights, you're going to go and eat your lunch. This stops everyone from coming together for lunch, which in a COVID world makes a lot of sense. It also gets people done sooner and sent home. And from a directorial standpoint, lunch can kill momentum. Like you're getting good stuff done, and then you stop, and union rule is an hour for lunch once the last plate is served. So if you have a large crew, it can take almost an hour just to get everyone their food. So you're really losing 2 hours there. And it can really just kill all momentum that you have. So a lot of directors have been pushing for French hours for a long time.
Well, you and I have even seen that on productions that we've worked on together,
Absolutely.
where we've had a lunch break. There have been 2 or 3 that you've had a
Yep.
lunch break, and some where I've had a dinner break here at the house. And I don't know how you felt afterwards, but there were times when I thought we should just go home because there's no way.
You know me, once I get a full belly, it's time for a nap in
That's
my
it.
world.
That's it.
So I am a big proponent of French hours, but as with everything, it's more complicated than it first appears. What French hours also does is it cuts down on overtime. So anyone below the line who will normally get time and a half after you hit the 8-hour mark, because you're not stopping for lunch, you're less likely to go past, or at least significantly. So if we move to French hours, a lot of your production crew would be losing money. So that's why we haven't yet. The unions have been pushing against that. But
Sure.
I think we're going to see a lot of French hours moving forward. But there's other interesting things happening in avoiding COVID while making films.
Yes.
People are trying to like isolate their entire crews, which for some projects might work. I actually 2 months ago now, I think I shot a short film up in Colorado, and we did that. I just had my wife come and crew with me, and I had 2 actors in it, and we just isolated beforehand, and then we drove out to a location that we rented, and it was self check-in. We didn't have to talk to anyone, and we just shot and came home. And that has advantages. It kind of makes it feel like summer camp. Everyone has to just stay together, and you're with each other the whole, it was a 5-day shoot for us. So, it was actors and us in the location we were filming at, really no breaks from each other. But, it also had limitations, obviously, of not having crew and not having collaboration. Like there were a lot of instances where problems came up and I just had to pick a solution. And I really think it would have benefited the project to have other people go like, okay, that is a solution, Robert, but maybe not the one we should go with, I think film at its best is collaborative. And I think by nature of having to pare down our sets and stuff, we're going to lose out on some of that during this. But what have you been hearing and planning and doing?
Well, Tyler Perry sequestering his folks.
Yeah.
And he's got a big studio.
Yep.
I cannot remember. It seems like it's hundreds of acres.
Yeah, it's quite large.
Yeah, very big. So that really caught my attention. The stuff that was coming out of Georgia was really cracking me up because it said that actors would be responsible for their own transportation. They had to show up in makeup. And I'm sure that this has changed, but in between shots, they were expected to go back to their car. And I thought, man, this is crazy. This is so wild. And then they encouraged, if there were going to be intimate scenes in your story, to cast family members together. And I just thought, man, this is so crazy.
Yikes.
And I've also heard, of course, this was early on when Australia got started, but it's also happening with some Hollywood stuff. They're just grabbing crew for background.
Yep.
I don't know how they're doing that. I don't know how they're paying for that or how it's working out, but they're just grabbing crew and like, okay, you're in a coffee shop.
Yeah. There's a lot of low budget indie style that's getting pushed into every level to just kind of make it happen. And that's kind of cool to see.
I agree. I totally agree. The expression is necessity is the mother of invention. You just use what's there and available, and it forces you to be creative.
Absolutely.
You just go. And So anyway, the other thing I think that you and I talked about a couple of weeks ago is that there are designated areas
Yep.
on the set. So you're supposed to hang out with your people. If you're an A group, then you have an area for A group, and B group, you stay here, and that type of thing. So
Yeah. So I think the conventional wisdom at this point is you're only a vector for COVID if you've had within 6 feet contact with someone for longer than 10 minutes.
right.
So they're just really trying to minimize vectors.
No vectors, please.
Yeah, it's gonna turn into some crazy like blaming though. I know
Oh, I
like
know.
public schools are dealing with this. I know the district that we're in, someone on the board mentioned that if teachers are doing their job, no student will be a vector to another student, which I don't know if you've ever tried to wrangle a group of 10-year-olds or whatever,
Yeah.
but I don't think that's realistic. And how it applies to us is I don't know if you've ever tried to wrangle a group of actors, but trying to keep them 6 feet away from each other and not hanging out and goofing off in between shots is not super realistic.
No, I don't really foresee any problems with crew, uh, because I think crew, they just think about things differently and look at the world differently. But actors by nature have a herd mentality.
Yeah.
They just love being with other actors and other people in general, and talking and touching and playing and hitting, and that's just part of how they roll. So I have been wondering about actors if they're about to go crazy, because they feel isolated from each other.
So I did the summer camp model during COVID to get something made and ran off into the woods and shot stuff with people. You went the different route and you did a truly isolated project through webcams.
Oh yeah.
What did you like about that? What did you not like? What did you learn from it?
So I really enjoyed it. We did it in April. And I'm trying to think what I really liked about it. I liked it. Well, first of all, we've got the technology to not have to completely stop.
Yeah.
That's what really bugged me. And that's what prompted me to write the script and cast it in the first place, is that in particular with theater, and then with a lot of films, like, we're done. We've got to stop completely. And I thought, no, I just don't believe that's true. And Zoom and other technology gives you the ability to continue to do it. So I really dug that aspect of it. If you're wanting to tell a story in that world, you gotta be really specific. Doing fight, if you and I are doing a fight, that doesn't roll with me. I mean,
Yeah.
I get it as a comedic moment, but if I'm really trying to tell a story, so I just used the pandemic, and it worked. It really did work. I think it played out well. It probably needs some help with some of the editing and stuff, but that's on me. But
Sure.
the actors did a really good job. There were some really good scenes. What I wish I should have done is had a big table read using Zoom and give some directions. I just really left them to themselves. I recorded this big video at the beginning and sent it to everybody to watch, but I just really depended on them. So I think that may have been good in some ways and bad in others. But you and I have talked about, if we have to go back indoors, that we'll do it again.
Yeah.
Except this time it won't be this deep, dark, serious thing. I've got an idea for something that's more humorous that I think will really work.
Cool.
But did you see Parks and Rec? They did it.
I did. Yeah.
And I thought, I mean, that's pretty much what we did.
Yep.
They had, better switching out from the scenes and stuff like that than we did. But
Yeah. Better graphics department.
yeah, better graphics, of course. But
I I thought the strength of that was how well they explained why people that should be isolated together were not isolated
It
together.
was great. And the fact, and I want to write a scene where you're responding to somebody that's supposed to be in your house, but they're not,
Yeah.
because they did some of that. What do
Yep.
you need? I thought, man, this is so clever. They're so good. Hats off to them.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I would love to have done what you did though. I'd love to go somewhere for a week and just shoot something and nobody leave. We're just there together and we just shoot it until we're done and we all go.
Yeah.
But I think for the actors, they seem to really get a lot out of it and realized, you know what? I can act anywhere. I don't have to have a stage.
Yeah.
I don't have to have a camera. I can use my laptop. I can use my phone because we had some scenes that were filmed outside with a guy using his phone.
Cool.
And yeah, and it worked. So I think it was really fun and creative. And so if we have to go back in, we'll do it. We'll give it a try. So we got projects coming up, and I guess we will try to follow some COVID guidelines. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So some streamlined crews, not as big a crew. What else? What else have we talked about?
In how we're implementing our projects moving forward.
Well, with the COVID, I mean, are we going to be temp checking? Are we going to have them fill out forms? Everybody's doing things different.
Yeah, temp checks are not a bad idea, but they require external thermometers because obviously internal thermometers are only going to make the problem much worse if we're checking our crew with those. And last I checked, those are hard to find these days.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it at all.
But I don't think if you're planning to shoot something in the next couple of months, I don't think doing temp checks is a bad idea at all.
Yeah.
By the very nature of what we do, like social distancing and even masks cannot always be in place, Sure. So as much mitigation as you can do, I think you should do. And then just like, the rule with actors is if it's not your prop, don't touch it. And I think that needs to move over to equipment as well.
Yeah.
And, if you're the DP, it's your camera, only you're interacting with it.
Nobody else.
If you can. On some of these smaller sets, you might have to get up close with the director to show him playback or whatever of what you just got if you don't have, wireless monitoring or a video village. But for our stuff, I think we will have wireless monitoring and wireless playback. So keeping people separate and not right up in each other's personal space, I think is a really important thing.
Yeah. Well, and two, this is something I think we talked about a few weeks ago, at least with the project with the theater folks, the rule of three. There's some of those scenes that we could take outside.
Yep.
If we wanted to. They don't have to be interior.
Yeah. I think whenever you can get outside, get some fresh air, I think that's the way to go right now.
I think that's probably what we're going to see. I think we're going to see a lot of shows that have exterior shots.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the fun that's going on. Any other fun?
Well, we can talk big picture and how it's affecting us as well of distribution. Have you been following Tenet at all?
Only bits and pieces. So I don't really have a good through line of what's going on.
So Nolan very famously is a cinema purist, right?
Absolutely.
He wants
no Netflix for him.
And he wants you to see his film in a theater that's been color calibrated and has a great sound mix, which I get. Like it really, like where you're viewing something can really affect it.
Yeah.
So there was no way that he was going to sign off. And because of who he is, he has this power of a not theatrical release for his film, Tenet. So they kept pushing it back and pushing it back. And it was supposed to open in about a week and a half from when we're recording this in the States. And they finally just canceled the release, postponed with no new date.
Okay. I had not seen that.
But because the US is handling the pandemic one way and the rest of the world, as we talked about, is opening up a little bit more and handling it different ways, there are nations that have theaters.
Yes.
So they are going to distribute it worldwide in theaters this month, but not in the US, which is different.
That's crazy.
But it's not as different as it originally sounds, because what was it? Was it Avatar? Whatever film it was that really switched us over to digital distribution. Before that, if you wanted to open in 3,000 theaters, you needed 3,000 physical copies. And that was expensive. So because of that, you would have your domestic release and you would make money from that. And then you would take those reels, some of them you'd leave for second theaters and stuff. And then you'd print some more now that you've made some money to, distribute into other countries. So the idea of opening some places but not everywhere, it really was the norm forever, except for the last 10 years. It's just a little odd for an American film made by an American studio to get a foreign release before domestic release.
Or domestic.
So
yeah. Now, go ahead.
My only thought is you're gonna see piracy. Like the reason a worldwide distribution at the same time.
Yeah.
One of the big moving, actually it might have been the Spider-Mans, the Raimi Spider-Mans that they did worldwide at the same time. But was to avoid piracy. The idea is people are less likely to pirate something if they have access to it. People are going to sneak their cameras into the theater like they used to record Tenet, and it'll be up and available for. And I mean, that's going to be a much worse viewing experience than if you just streamed it. So I don't know if Nolan's going to be super happy with the way it played out, but the studios need some cash.
No, they've got to have some cash flow. You're exactly right. So totally off of what you said. I've never told you this story. When I was in grad school at the University of Oklahoma, so this is the early 1990s. Okay. Yeah. My roommate that I lived with, he was one of the assistant managers at one of the movie theaters there in Norman, Oklahoma. And I'll never forget, they had a movie, I can't remember the movie, but it was closing. And he said, I want you to go with me to Oklahoma City to the bus stop because we have to deliver these reels for the movie to ship them on. And so he and I, it must have been 2:00 in the morning. We're driving up to the bus stop downtown Oklahoma City. We're spooked out of our minds. It's freaky. We're carrying these reel boxes.
Yeah, big metal.
Let's go.
Yep, that's crazy.
Oh, it was so great. It was so great. So, yeah. I don't know, but they've got to generate some money. They've got to have money coming in. They're like everybody else. They've got to have money coming in. There's so many people that are suffering right now because they don't have a job.
Yep.
To work in the industry. And so I think a lot of people, they're just going to take whatever they can get. I think that's my fear, is that a lot of people are just going to take whatever they can get. And if the sickness starts, I think you're right. The finger pointing is going to start.
Yep.
With that. So, we're going to do the best that we can with the students and try to educate them and keep going until they tell us to go home. And so we can do it. We can make. I think it's going to be still very educational, very exciting, because we're going to have to really it's creative. Besides creating the moments, getting the performances we all want, the shots that we want, we have to think about, okay, now we have to really consciously be aware of safety.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing.
No.
It may be a pain in the rear thing, but it'll probably be good for us. And I think it'll be really good for the students.
Are you planning on having a COVID compliance officer as a team member?
Well, so I've done some research into that. There's a thing online called Safe Set International. And there's somebody that I follow in the film community out there that went through the training and got their certificate. Well, it's a free thing online that you just go through, but it doesn't make you really what was the word that you used? COVID
Compliance officer?
Compliance. That's the word I forgot. Compliance officer. I don't think it makes you that. It just means you've gone through the training and get a certificate that they are going to email you. So I've thought about going through that, but I'm actually trying to find, is there any intense training out there available? I haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
Have you?
I haven't. In fact, I've seen a bunch of like photos, and of course, like this will always happen, and these are the things that people enjoy sharing, but on my social media of official COVID in compliance inspectors and stuff for cities, like they're the ones wearing the masks incorrectly or not standing at the designated 6 feet apart thing in line, and people are taking pictures of this and sending. And
yeah, this I just looked it up. It's called Safe Sets International, and they've got a lot of partners with it. And you can click get your COVID certificate and you can start the training. So I thought about doing that, but then I thought, well, yeah, but it doesn't necessarily carry this big weighty stick.
Right.
Stick's probably not the right analogy I'm thinking of, but someone that really has some authority with that. But I haven't found any. I'd love to find some really hardcore training for COVID compliance officer. I'd love to. If you find that, send it out. I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
That's as far as I've gotten.
Okay.
Because I think we have been so blasted. I think people know about the PPE and things like that. Again, they may not be wearing it correctly, but at least they know about it.
Yeah.
I do want to try to find some external body, thermometers and things like that, if that's even possible to find, or if we're going to have to fly to Mexico to get some on the black market. I don't know.
Well, Mexico won't let us in right now because we're too dangerous. So.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. So somewhere. Anyway, that's about as far as I've got. And of course, when I write something, I usually have a streamlined cast anyway. I don't like big casts.
Yeah.
And streamlining the crew, we had talked about doing that. DP, boom operator, one grip, script supervisor, and the Rule of Three project has a couple episodes available for directors, student directors, if they want to do that. So that's a very small crew. And I thought there are actually some classroom scenes where we may end up having to grab crew and say, go sit in that desk.
Yep.
And I am too, with a cap on.
Yeah, just pull down. I'll need to
You've
wear
done
my
that
black,
a few times, haven't
my
you?
black cap. Yep. Nope. That's Robert the DP's specialty. Go and stand in the back of the shot to add some life to it.
I love it. But we'll do it. We'll do it. And again, and I sound like I'm such a broken record, but since our mission is education, everything we do is with that first and foremost. Is how is it actually going to help them learn anything? Because we're going to be stuck with this probably for a while.
Yeah.
And so if any of our students go off and get any kind of work with it, they'll have to do it. So for us to be able to kind of prep them for that along the way, I think it'd be good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, let's wrap it up by stuff we've watched or listened to.
Yeah.
What have you been watching? Share.
I just finished watching The Wrong Mans, which is a British comedy miniseries that's kind of taking the mickey, as they say, at some classic Hitchcock tropes, but is still in that vein. And I love Hitchcock, so it's
of course,
very much made for me. It's on Hulu, so if you have Hulu, check it out. There's 2 seasons. I think it's 10 episodes total between the 2 seasons. They're 30-minute episodes, so it's not a big time commitment. But the main thing that is a big time commitment, because these people just are working constantly, and when you make them stop working, they need to do something. But Roger Deakins and his wife have started a podcast, and I swear they upload like every other day
it's like,
a new podcast.
There's like 40 or 50 episodes up already.
Yeah, it's insane.
But they're great, aren't they? I mean, they're great.
So good. Like, you throw a dart at a wall, and whichever episode it lands on, it will be your new favorite thing that you've listened to.
Yeah.
So I cannot recommend that enough. Joel Cohen was just on. It'll probably be 12 episodes back by the time you're listening to this, but that was a particularly good one. But he has craft episodes where he talks about designing lenses or how he lights things, and then a bunch of interviews with a lot of other makers, and it's great. What about you?
It's great to hear it from the cinematographer's perspective, and he's really kind of a no-nonsense, straightforward kind of guy. I really love his style.
I love him. Yeah.
He's really obviously good at what he does, but the way that he communicates is just, this is what I do. I love that.
I have a lot of podcasts that I love to listen to, but one thing in a lot of interview podcasts, like most of the time you find yourself going like, okay, interviewer, shut up and let the guest talk. Like, I want to hear from this expert you brought in. I want to hear their stuff. But with this one, like, whenever Roger starts talking, I'm like, this is just as good. Great. Let's hear his perspective.
It really is good. And it's so cool that he has done it.
Yep. So there's probably over 50 hours of audio in that. So if you haven't found it yet, I encourage you to go and give it a listen.
Absolutely. That it?
That's it on my end.
Oh my goodness.
I've been busy editing.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I've been watching new and old. Really cool stuff. I watched an old Howard Hawks movie. Howard Hawks, very famous director. And the reason I mention Hawks, and I mention him to students, is that a lot of filmmakers that students like watch Howard Hawks movies. Tarantino is a huge Hawks fan, and several people. And I watched one of his with Cary Grant and Sheridan called "I Was a Mail War Bride."
Absolutely.
You seen that?
Yeah.
It is so great. Mm-hmm. It is, and it's so accessible. It's not like you're watching something that you can't comprehend. It's so great. Then I went on a sci-fi trip that we talked about. I rewatched Star Wars, the first 3, the ones that really count. And that led me to Buckaroo Banzai.
Nice.
You ever seen Buckaroo Banzai?
I have not, but I am familiar.
Buckaroo Banzai is in a book called The 50 Cult Movie Favorites You Should Watch Before You Die, I think is the title, or something like that.
Yeah.
It will blow your mind the first time you watch it. When it came out in 1984, I remember it didn't do well, but it has since become this huge cult thing. In fact, John Lithgow, who's in it, Peter Weller, who plays Buckaroo Banzai, who's in it. They've been going on the circuit for several years, having screenings of Buckaroo Banzai.
That's great.
It's a very influential film to a lot of people. Kevin Smith, they've been trying to get a series made from it. If you've seen Ready Player One,
Yeah.
he actually, he's about to go on a date or something, I think, and he puts on the Buckaroo Banzai costume.
Nice.
It's just a huge, I highly recommend it. And then, so that eventually led me to Arrival.
Yeah.
Which they're night and day. Have you ever seen Arrival?
I have. I'm a big fan of Arrival.
I want to make a movie like Arrival one day. Man, it is so powerful.
I'm very partial in this because I've had the pleasure of meeting and getting to do some workshops with the guy, but the sound design in that film is
really when they're inside the ship.
Yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love it. Yeah, it's so moving. It's so moving to me, that, talking about that engagement in movies and that emotional connection is so strong. So anyway, I've watched all kinds of stuff, mix of old and new. Rewatched Pillow Talk with Doris Day and Rock Hudson, which, if you're going to be a film person, you have to watch.
Yeah,
you do because it created a brand new genre.
Yep, absolutely.
So, like I said, I've been all over the place. You'll be very happy to know, as far as my podcasts, BBC Radio 4 is going back and doing Cabin Pressure. So I've gone back to re-listen to Cabin Pressure.
Nice.
Which I highly recommend. It's great storytelling. It's very well written, but the acting in it is superb. Benedict
so good.
Cumberbatch.
Yep.
And I cannot remember the guy who plays Douglas. He's a big-time British actor. It's a great, you and I both agree that it's just
so good.
It's so good.
Yep.
So funny. And then for factual stuff, I listened to a podcast called Murder in Hollywoodland.
Yep.
And they just finished dealing with the William Desmond Taylor murder from 1922.
Mm-hmm.
Which was never solved, and which was the second big controversy that Hollywood experienced in the early days. It's considered to be the second. The first one is Fatty Roscoe Arbuckle.
Yeah.
His controversy. Anyway, they do a very good job. It's very in-depth. But also some books I wanted to mention. I read a book called The Noir Style, which I think some of our students will be really interested in. And pretty much just backlight everything.
Yep.
And then I read a really good biography on Rita Hayworth. And she is in the top 25 stars of all time, I think. That's from AFI. So anyway, I've had a lot of extra time to read and listen and watch movies. So those are my recommendations to everybody.
Well, since you recommended books, I'll jump in.
Yeah, do it.
I'm rereading Bruce Campbell's biographies, Hail to the Chin and If Chins Could Kill. And if you're a fan of Bruce Campbell, or even if you're not, if you're just a fan of indie filmmaking, they're both really, really good, really good books. And if you're an audiobook person, he narrates them himself and he adds some information. So if you have Audible, I would highly recommend you spend a credit on If Chins Could Kill.
The anecdotes are so well told and they're so funny.
Yeah.
But I remember when the first one came out, I was so inspired. And my buddies, he went on a big book tour for the first one. So this has been, I don't know, 15 years ago, maybe longer than that.
Yeah.
When the first one came out, and he came to Oklahoma City and I was in rehearsal and he said, man, come with us. We're going to go see Bruce Campbell. I said, man, I am in rehearsal. I really cannot make the trip to go. We must've been close to Tech or so. I don't know.
Yeah.
So they got me a book and they said, will you sign this for our buddy? He's in rehearsal, and he had something snarky to say about, oh yeah, the whole rehearsal excuse.
Uh-huh.
So I've got a signed copy
That's
of the
awesome.
first one. They said they said that he takes time with every single fan. He'll take pictures. He's very open and very friendly. Those books are so inspiring to anybody wanting to get into film. And to
Yep.
realize that he and Sam Raimi and Sam Raimi's brother were just pups in the 70s, and they were making Super 8 movies, weren't they? Or were 16?
Yep. Started with Super 8, then they did Evil Dead on 16 millimeter.
And Raimi is signed up to do Doctor Strange too. So,
Yep.
just from some guys in Michigan making movies.
Yeah, and they're also directly responsible for the Coen brothers. Because the Coen brothers were inspired by their just go out and do it, and they self-financed their first film because of Evil Dead. So, yeah.
Well, I'm convinced that if we could get the backing, we could get Bruce in a movie. I think we could get Bruce Campbell in a movie. We could.
That would make me so happy.
Wouldn't you love to have Bruce Campbell in a movie?
Even if he's just drinking coffee in the background and says two lines, like, I would.
That's one of my dreams, Robert.
Yeah, mine as well.
Well, that's good. Anything else you're reading?
I went back through Like Brothers, which is the Duplass brothers biography. The Duplass brothers are responsible for what's called mumblecore. As an indie film movement, which is definitely falling out of style at this point. But regardless of your opinion of their films, it's a good book that explores what it's like to try to make movies without any connections. So that's another one that I would recommend filmmakers check out.
Great. Well, okay. That's another episode done then.
Cool.
And I guess we'll make another one in 5 months.
Yeah, five months seems to be the sweet spot.
Anyway, so wonderful. Thanks for tuning in at the Flicks. It's Robert Thomas. You're supposed to mention me now since we're...
And Bret Jones.
See? Wow, it's bad when you got a cue.
It's our witty repartee that people tune in for.
What's your bachelor's in again? I forget.
I don't know, but whoever taught me in it, they need to lock up.
I wasn't the only one.
Well, okay.
You performer, you. Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right. So peace out.